Shalom from Mount Carmel. I'd like to say hello to all of the Silkstream Asia dedicated intercessors and to give you greetings and thanks for standing with us through more than 450 days of war since October 7th of 2023. And that's nearly 15 months of war every day here in the land of Israel. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for your encouragement and support over all of those months. And tonight I want to not only convey our gratitude, but also give you an overview and a report and some points for prayer in the future. So this has been Israel's longest war. It seems like every generation in Israel has a war to remember and talk about, and this country's modern history really is marked. The milestones of our modern history are the wars that we fought with neighboring countries in the Middle East, starting in 1948, the War of Independence, and then 1967, the 6 Days War. Followed soon after in 1973 by the Yom Kippur War. So 50 years ago, that war, and each one of these wars has changed Israel and has really molded that particular generation of Israelis. In the 50 years since the Yom Kippur War until now, it's been a series of what we would call the Palestinian Intifada, which is a word for uprising. And so this has been marked by waves of terrorism and threats and internal strife, because so many of the Palestinian people live within the borders of the state of Israel. And then there was in 2006 what they call the Second Lebanese War, which was a short war which was fought inconclusively with Hezbollah in the north. And so really since 1973, this particular war is the most significant and, as I said a moment ago, the longest in Israeli history. This war is changing Israel. We already know that our country and we as a generation of Israelis will never be the same again. There's no going back to the way we were, the way we thought, the way we felt as Israelis before this war. This is really a game changer and a culture changer for Israel. This war is not just changing Israel, it's also changing our region. Because it's impacted the whole Palestinian cause, not only in Gaza, but on the West Bank, and certainly in the north, the Hezbollah movement in southern Lebanon, and now of course that's spread to Syria, and I'll say a bit more about their regional impact a little bit later in this update. And as a result of this long war, 15 months of war so far, because it's not over and is likely to extend for many more months yet to come, this war is changing the world. It's changing the world's attitude towards Israel, towards Jewish people, towards terrorism, and towards extremism of all kinds. And so there's been a forced change in the politics and the culture of the world simply because of this war. So this is a major milestone. You could say this is our war, the war of our generation, and in so many ways it will define the way we stand as Israelis in our own country and in the world. So I'd like to address this one point at a time. The first thing I'd like to talk to you about right now is about how this war that we've gone through the last 15 months, how it's been changing Israel. Now, one thing you need to know about Israel is we're a nation of immigrants. The Jews have been wandering from country to country, from continent to continent, literally the entire world for almost 2,000 years, and have just come back less than 100 years ago to form a modern nation. and we are still, as a country, a divided, and I have to be honest with you, a very contentious nation. I mean, internally, it's like we argue with one another. This is kind of a national conversation that goes on. It's not really always a conversation. In fact, most of the time, it's really an argument. And it reveals that there are deep divisions and fractures in Israeli society. This is you might expect this from people who have wandered the world and lived in other people's countries for nearly 2,000 years, now to come back and suddenly again have a country of our own. It's not an easy adjustment, but add to that just the personality of Israeli people, and you'll realize we have a contentious society. Some of the major divisions that you're probably all aware of is the secular religious division. So you have ultra secular people who have made, you might say, Tel Aviv is the capital of secular Israel, and then you have religious people who are making Jerusalem their capital, and you have, among the religious, you have very religious and ultra religious. Okay, and so you have these extremes in Israeli society on this entire continuum of secularism versus religiosity. And then, of course, politically, we're also spread out from left and right. Okay, so the right wing of Israeli politics would be more Israel for the Jews. Okay, kind of an Israeli nationalism, and then on the left you would have a vision of a pluralistic Israel, a democratic Israel, a liberal Israel, equal rights for everyone. Okay, more inclusive. So it kind of mirrors the left and right that you may be familiar with in the West, in the United States, but it also has this Jewish character to it. Okay, the left and the right, and they're about equally balanced. And in Israel, there isn't much middle ground. I mean, probably the majority of people live the way they live, and what they believe and the way they conduct their lives are in the center. I mean, most societies are like that. You have the majority of people are kind of center, or you might say center right, perhaps. But in Israel, it's right and left, and there seems to be little common ground. Okay, we're a divided, contentious society, just in a normal way. One of the other changes that has been revealed by this war is the stuff, the strength, the backbone of the younger generation. Okay, our kids, or maybe you might say grandkids, just coming out of their teens, because all Israelis, both boys and girls, have national service. They have to serve in the armed forces as soon as they finish secondary school, and so the army fills its ranks with 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds. Okay, this is the regular army of Israel. And before this war, the older generation who had been through wars and conflicts and done their military service and seen the Israeli military develop as a modern fighting force, they kind of had, you might say, a disdain for the younger kids who were coming into the army. They called them, oh, you're the TikTok generation. Okay, what you know is everything you learned online, and you play computer games. Nobody knows what kind of people you really are, and whether you're going to stand the test of the pressures of life and what it means to defend this country. Okay, now all of those doubts are gone. Okay, this young generation has proven itself to be really, really tough, and they surprised everybody. The strength, the determination, the love of the nation, the willingness to stand shoulder to shoulder with Israelis of all different kinds, left, right, religious, non-religious, in the military. It has very little bearing, and they've worked together, they've sacrificed together, They've given their lives together. They've saved each other's lives. This has been an amazing generation of soldiers, and it's been a really an encouraging sign that the next generation, younger Israelis, have the stuff it takes, the right stuff, to continue to build the nation and to continue to defend it against our enemies, both foreign and within our borders. This last 15 months has been a time of deep, deep wounding, trauma, and stress on all Israelis. The entire country has been under bombardment. Thousands, I would say tens of thousands of missiles, rockets, drones have been launched at Israel from multiple fronts, from as far away as Iran and Yemen and Iraq, and then thousands and thousands from Gaza and from southern Lebanon, and from closer destinations as well. So the front on the war has not just been with soldiers fighting on the very front lines of combat, but every civilian is now used to the wail of sirens, running to bomb shelters, wondering if you're safe or if your family is safe. Houses have been blown up, civilians, dozens have been killed over the last 15 months, all over the country. And even our city here on Mount Carmel, we spent several months under bombardment from Hezbollah, and got used to running for shelters. Buildings were blown up. God, miraculously, we've seen not only stress, trauma, death, and injury, but we've also seen miraculous deliverance. And even members of our own congregation, when rockets somehow eluded the Iron Dome anti-missile system and fell and exploded in populated areas in our city, miraculously schools were protected, schools were hit, and students were unharmed. The teacher had decided just a minute earlier, well, I might as well make the kids go to the shelter. And then unexpectedly, the rocket hit their playground. A rocket blew up a synagogue, and no one was praying. Okay, it was the prayers had finished, everyone had gone home, and then the rocket came and destroyed the building. And that was just 2 doors down from a woman who is in our congregation. Her apartment 2 doors down. None of the windows in her apartment were broken. All the windows in her building were broken, but none of hers. And she decided that she would stay the night, and where she was. She was offered to be evacuated. The electricity was cut. She stayed in her apartment. The electric company worked overnight to get the electricity back on. And she said her first visitors were tax inspectors from the government of Israel. They wanted to assess whatever damage had been done, because the government has a policy of repaying citizens for any losses that are incurred during terrorist attacks. Okay, so this has been a war of hundreds, thousands of stories of sacrifice, stories of trauma, stories of stress, stories of loss and grief, but also stories of deliverance and answered prayer and miraculous instances. What I think in general, what we're seeing is that Israel, which is less than 80 years old as a modern nation, and you in Singapore would understand that this is not a long time. You're not really a veteran country with less than a century of history. Only 2 or 3 or 4 generations, of people in your land or in a new culture. But I think about Israel, the big change in general, one way to describe it would be that before this war, we were really, we weren't an infant nation, but we were an adolescent nation. Like not really mature, like a young adult that's not really an adult yet, if you understand what I'm saying. An adolescent nation. We argued about things that we didn't need to argue about. We dug our heels in on issues that we didn't need to be stubborn about. and we were overconfident and on one hand and underconfident on the other, lacking confidence on the other. This war, I think, has really done a lot to impact that adolescence. And I have a feeling that when this war finally ends, there will be a new maturity to Israelis, kind of, a sense of more seriousness as a nation. One of the reasons is because of this incredible and unforeseen surge of anti-Semitism, anti-Israel sentiment all over the world, in surprising places, not just among guest workers and immigrants from the Middle East, refugees from the Middle East that flooded Europe and other advanced countries. Okay, they're in some ways at the core of the anti-Israel demonstrations that we've seen in capitals across the world. But on U.S. campuses and academics and government officials and United Nations officials and NGO officials and yes, church officials as well, the anti-Israel sentiment that has come out has really been shocking. It's been one of the unforeseen results of this war. People didn't realize the breadth and the depth of sentiment against Israel and really just plain flat out against Jewish people that is harbored in various parts of the world. And I think one of the results in Israel, and I'll come back to that, but I think one of the results in Israel is that as Israelis, I think it's going to sink in that, you know what, there are going to be people in this world who don't like us. There are going to be people in this world who hate us. There are going to be people in this world who want to destroy us, whether we like it or not. And it's not a matter of convincing everybody. In a sense, it's a matter of walking out into the world in strength and confidence and faith in the God of Israel. I think that's what I mean when I say a new kind of seriousness. You might say a dignity as a national identity, with that all right, we're not going to convince everybody, and it's not required for everybody to love us, but we're here, and God's purposes are going to be fulfilled, and we don't need to apologize for being who we are. I think that's kind of a more of a seriousness, more of a maturity that will come upon this nation as a result of this long, difficult, and tragic war that was forced upon us 15 months ago with the terror attack from Hamas on October 7th, where 1,200 Israelis were murdered, and more than 250 were taken hostage. And to this day, 15 months later, the hostages are still being held. Over 100 hostages are still being held. Perhaps as many as half of them are already dead, and their bodies are being held as bargaining chips still in Gaza amongst the remains of the Hamas forces, which have been decimated after 15 months of really a brutal house-to-house war in Gaza and beneath Gaza in the extensive hundreds and hundreds of kilometers of tunnels, the network of tunnels that they have built over the last 20 years, where this battle has raged for 15 months. More than 100 hostages are still held as I speak even now.